Welcome everyone to tonight's council meeting for Monday the 12th of November 2018. We'll start with the opening prayer. If we could all stand please. Lord, we ask that you guide us in our decision making, protect us in the community we serve from all that is evil, and strengthen our unity for the welfare of the city. Amen. I would like to acknowledge the Wiradjuri people as the traditional custodians of the land that we meet upon today, and pay my respects to the elders both past, present and future, for they hold the memories, culture, tradition and hopes of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people that contribute to our community. Thank you. I'd like to inform you that this council meeting is being webcast and recorded. By speaking at the council meeting, you agree to being recorded and webcast. Please ensure that if and when you are speaking at this council meeting, you are respectful to other people and use appropriate language. AlburyCity accepts no liability for any defamatory or offensive remarks or gestures made during the course of this council meeting. An audio recording will be made for administrative purposes. Conflict of interest declarations received by the Chair, and I have not received any. Disclosure of political donations. Mr Zachnich.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. This advice to the council meeting relates to the Environmental Planning and Assessment Act 1979, Section 147, requires a person submitting a planning applications or submissions regarding a planning application to disclose any reportable political donation and or gifts to any local councillor or employee of the council. Reportable political donations include those of or above $1,000. The disclosure statement forms are available on Council's website or from the Customer Service Centre and must be lodged in accordance with the Act. The forms are also available at the back of the chamber during meetings. In dealing with development applications, councillors need to take into account specific matters contained in the Environmental Planning and Assessment Act. Accordingly, the provisions of Section 79C1 of that Act are set out in the Council Officer's report detailing issues to be considered. The Local Government Act 1993, Section 375A requires that a division be called whenever a motion for a planning decision is put at a meeting of the Council. Planning decision means a decision made in the exercise of a function of Council under the Environmental Planning and Assessment Act, including a decision relating to a development application, an environmental planning instrument, a development control plan or a development contribution plan under that Act.
If Councillor Vanderven and grant leave of absence for the meeting. I'm not sure where he is, but I'm very happy to do so.
Thank you. Councillor Doxey.
Very happy to second, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. On that note, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Anyone against? The motion is carried. Thank you, councillors. CM5, there is no Merrill minute. CM6, action plan. CM 6.1 to 6.4, happy to take as a block. Councillor Thurley.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I move the following action plans be received and noted. 1, actions complete for noting only. 2, actions in progress, and 3, long-term issues more than 3 months.
Thank you. Councillor Stutchbury.
I second that in a block, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Stutchbury. Councillor Thurley, did you wish to speak to that at all?
I just had one question. Is there any action on the matter relating to T Corp's investment issue? Have we had any response from the Minister?
Mr Zachnich.
Mr Finlayson.
Mr Finlayson.
Through you, Mr Mayor, yes, we have received a response recently from the New South Wales Local Government Minister, which will be distributed to councillors but also presented to Council for consideration at its next council meeting.
Comfortable with that, Councillor Thurley? Did you wish to speak to...
No, thank you.
Thank you. Happy to put the motion. All those in favour? Anyone against? The motion is carried. Thank you. CM7, confirmation minutes of the previous meeting. Thank you. Councillor Stutchbury.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I would like to move that we accept the minutes of the council meeting held on the 29th of October 2018 at 6:28 p.m. and that they be confirmed.
Thank you. Councillor Doxey.
Happy to second, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Stutchbury, do you wish to speak to that at all?
I have read those minutes and could find nothing for which I need to comment.
Thank you. Councillor Cameron, your button's pressed. Did you wish to speak to that at all? There are no further debates or discussion. Happy to put the motion. All those in favour? Anyone against? The motion is carried. Thank you. CM8, there are no reports from community forums. CM 9, notices of motion, CM 9.1, Albury-Wodonga Regional Food Share. Councillor Cameron.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd like to move that Council 1 resolves to donate a one-off sum of $10,000 in addition to the ongoing support via Gleneco to Albury-Wodonga Regional Food Share. 2, resolves that the Mayor write to Wodonga City Council inviting them to match the donation in the spirit of the Two Cities One Community Initiative. 3, resolves that the Mayor write to the New South Wales Government through the member for Albury, seeking that the New South Wales Government make available a similar amount to the Albury-Wodonga Regional Food Share.
Thank you. Councillor Doxey.
Happy to second, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Cameron, did you wish to speak to that?
Thanks, Mr Mayor. I think we've all become aware, I would imagine most of us are aware today of savage cuts that have been made to Food Bank, which is an umbrella organisation that, as I understand it, passes on some material support to Food Share. And if comments in the Board of Mail today are accurate, then there may be some knock-on effect from that terrible and savage cut by our federal government, which seems to go from lurch from pillar to post, cutting services here and there, while simultaneously, over the last few years, increasing the deficit. In any case, I think this is a worthy motion and it's a worthy organisation. It's on record locally as seeking up to $60,000 assistance, and I hope councillors will give some consideration to possibly, again, as we did in 2016, making a small, relatively small donation to a very worthy organisation. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Glacken, you have a question?
I do, thank you, Mr Mayor. And I'll preface it with, today I left my business and had to drive somewhere and was listening to ABC radio, and the Senate was on. One of the items raised during that brief period I was in the car was about Food Share, or Food Bank, and that there was a message given over the radio from the relevant minister. I missed who that relevant minister was, but that the issue is being investigated at this present time. Noting that information that I have heard today, I would ask if we might consider, if Councillor Cameron might consider the possibility of moving this decision tonight until we can gather further information and make a decision based on that further information.
Councillor Cameron, were you interested in deferring this motion until we find out any further information from the federal government's decision?
I thank Councillor Glacken for her suggestion, but I think it's important to remember that Food Bank and Food Share are actually two different organisations. My motion deals with Food Share, which is the local organisation. Now there is a connection, but it's not a overarching or formal direct connection. There is some material that's provided to, as I understand it, to Food Share by Food Bank, but largely Food Share is an indigenous to this region, and was developed by charitable people and certainly hard-working people locally. So I'd be keen to press on with my notice of motion, but I'm certainly happy to entertain amendments. I've also should mention, perhaps if you'll indulge me, Mr Mayor, that on Friday I became aware that there have already been some discussions between council, between yourself and the General Manager at Wodonga, and that's pleasing and encouraging. And certainly I don't want this motion to derail those discussions, and accordingly I'm quite happy to contemplate suitable amendments should fellow councillors have them.
Thank you. Councillor Clark, you have a further question?
Thank you. Through you to the most relevant member of staff. Can I be brief then, because we have no briefing notes with this, as to what the relationship is between Food Share and Food Bank and the funding thereof, including from the federal government, please? Thank you.
Ms Code.
Thank you for the question. Through you, Mr Mayor. Food Share receives about 45% of its food from the Food Bank in Victoria, and that includes meals from Second Bite and from Fair Share, which is based in Melbourne. And then, as was referenced earlier, the rest of it comes from local producers and local suppliers who donate their foods, local organisations. In terms of the federal government funding,
speaking against this particular notice of motion. Food share and related organisations play an important role in making sure that food is not wasted and goes from people who don't need it to people who do need it. And a one-off donation of $10,000 is not going to help food share very much and for very long. And what they require, what this organisation requires, is ongoing secure funding into the future. And this won't help. Items 2 and 3 in the notice of motion are admirable and are probably already being undertaken by council anyway. If anyone doubts my interest in food wastage, I would remind the General Manager that after the recent very successful local government conference, I sent some emails regarding food wastage at that particular conference. It was really quite extreme, and because the food was displayed on tables, it was unable to be recycled and had to be thrown out. And I think that if we wanted to address food wastage, we might address the next time we run one of these conferences or similar how we place the food for our guests, such that wastage is minimised. In any case, that's enough of my diatribe. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stutchbury. I have another speaker against Councillor Glock. Can you help me for me to take a question, Councillor Glock? Yep. Councillor Con, you have a question?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. It's not a question. I'd like to propose an amended version of this motion that I believe keeps the intent of the motion but acknowledges some of the concerns raised by Councillor Stutchbury.
Yes, and it is.
Thank you. My amended version of the motion is that Council A acknowledge the substantial contribution to the Albury-Wodonga community made by Food Share. B, that we continue ongoing advocacy on behalf of Food Share to the New South Wales Government through RAMJO, the Riverina-Murray Joint Organisation of Councils, and C, that we invite Food Share to apply for Albury City Council funding through our existing formal channels.
Thank you. Seconder is Councillor Thurley.
Well, I'm happy to second the motion. I guess it needs Councillor Cameron to decide whether he'll accept the amendment.
I'm happy for the amendment to stand as to discuss the amendment and open the debate on the amendment. So if you're happy to second it, Councillor Thurley, that's fine.
I am.
Councillor Con, did you wish to open debate on the amendment?
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. Look, I echo the comments already made about the...
Councillor Cameron?
You neglected to ask me if that amendment is acceptable to me, and it is, and that therefore I would accept it, and that would become the motion. That's the correct procedure.
Well, it is if you wish to cut corners, but in this case,
I don't wish to cut corners. I wish to follow the correct procedure, Mr Mayor, and that is the correct procedure. When an amendment is moved, the mover of the original motion has the option to accept the amendment, which then becomes the motion.
Do you wish to accept it, Councillor Cameron?
Yes, thank you.
Well, you need to withdraw the original motion.
Well, in accepting it, I do withdraw it. That's the process.
Thank you. So the motion is as stated by Councillor Con at this point and seconded by Councillor Thurley. Councillor Con, did you wish to speak to that?
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. I'm happy to speak to this version of the motion. Look, I can echo comments already made about the significant contribution that Food Share makes. It's got a double social benefit to the community by feeding people who need it, but also by training young people in association with Wodonga TAFE, and there's obviously the environmental benefit of preventing food wastage. I believe that the original motion, while admirable in its intent, is not going to address the significant ongoing funding issues faced by Food Share, and to do that in a meaningful way, we need engagement from other levels of government, and I'm pleased to hear that Councillor Mack has been discussing the benefits of Food Share with his colleagues at RAMJO, and that would be perhaps a more effective way of seeking state government funding to secure for Food Share into the long term. Albury Council has a community fund where we've incorporated donations to important community organisations into our budget process. I believe that if we're going to support them financially, they should go through the proper channels and make a formal application, but then also we might be able to provide them with ongoing funding that will be far more important to their ongoing work in the community than a one-off donation.
Thank you, Councillor Con. Councillor Stutchbury used to speak for. There are no speakers against at this point.
Well, in that case, I'll be very brief. I think that Councillor Cameron's original motion was admirable but was not quite right. I think that this amendment is a much better fit for us, and I'll be supporting it with my vote.
Thank you. No speakers against. Councillor Thurley used to speak for.
Yes, I do. Thank you, Mr Mayor. Look, I have serious concerns about motions of the type that Councillor Cameron raised. Basically, you're either on a winner or a loser here. If you oppose that motion, you're opposing food share, and that couldn't be further from the truth. I fully support what they do in this community, but that original motion, if you voted against it for principled reasons such as those that Councillor Stutchbury and Councillor Conn have enunciated, you are seen to be some sort of Grinch who does not support local hard-working groups, and that couldn't be further than the truth. This second motion addresses what really should be a long-term sustainability issue. How can this group keep going, keep doing the good work, not just next year with $10,000 or next 3 months with $10,000? I've got no idea how much and how long that would keep them going. But they need to be sustained, they need to be sustainable. And the intent of this motion, unlike the original motion, is to look at their long-term future and sustainability. And so that's why I support this motion, not the original.
Thank you, Councillor Thurley. Councillor Glacken, do you have a question?
Yes, could I, is it possible for us still to be updated at some stage with the matrix for the funding for the organisation so that we have a better knowledge? Thank you very much.
I might invite them along to do a presentation of you at a workshop, if that's okay.
No, I'm just interested in the funding. Yeah.
No worries.
We had a presentation from some years ago.
Yeah. So, just as there are no further speakers for or against, I speak for the motion, but I will, by explanation, speak for that motion on the basis of the discussions I've had over 3 or 4 years with Food Share Albury-Wodonga. They've gone through a significant transition in the last 4 years. During that period, they came to us. We did give them $10,000 in 2016. They have gone through a rigorous process of strategic planning and presenting a business case as a board. The difficulty for them is the $160,000 they require a year in operational costs that are not funded by any government, state or federal. They certainly have a relationship with Food Bank Victoria, which is a distribution relationship, but they also access food and other vegetables and the like from local producers. They also do produce a level of support to the Southern Riverina councils, including as far north as Wagga, which produces another issue for us as a New South Wales council, including Albury, that our state government does not provide adequate food relief for our state. So as a matter of importance and as a matter of urgency, I've scheduled an agenda item in Wednesday's meeting at Ramjo to discuss this at Ramjo level. They do indeed need financial support in the next 12 months, but we'll be taking an adversarial position on this particular issue and advocating for the government, New South Wales, to step up and take responsibility for that position, not the entire position, but position of the councils that are involved on this side of the border. In terms of the Victorian side of the border, I believe the Cross-Border Commissioner has provided them with necessary links to the Victorian Government through DHSS. So thanks for the motion, Councillor Cameron and Councillor Conn, and I'm happy to vote for it. Councillor Conn, do you wish to close debate on that motion?
No, thank you, Mr Mayor.
Happy to put the motion. All those in favour? Anyone against? The motion is carried. CM 11.1, minutes of the Australian Airports Association. Thank you, councillors. Councillor Glacken.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. To move the recommendation as a motion that the minutes recommendations of the Australian Airports Association New South Wales Division meeting held on 30th of August 2018 be received, noted and accepted, and note that our staff were in attendance. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Thurley.
Second the motion, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Glacken, do you wish to speak to that?
No, thank you.
Happy to put that motion. All those in favour? Anyone against? The motion is carried. CM 12, documents for sealing. Councillor Stutchbury.
Yes, this is my favourite one, Mr Mayor. I'd like to recommend that Council authorises its seal to be affixed to the documents outlined below in the presence of two signatories authorised to affix the seal pursuant to Regulation 400 of the Local Government General Regulation 2005 and the Council seal and management of legal documents and advice procedure. A. Albury City lease to Riverina and Murray Joint Organisations, Ramjo, of Suite 2, 3rd floor, 553 Kiwi Street, Albury, for 2 years commencing 1 July 2018, FIL 09/01805. And there is no B.
Thank you. Councillor Thurley.
Second the motion, Mr Mayor, without the B.
Thank you. Councillor Stutchbury, do you wish to speak to that motion?
Yes. No.
Well,
no,
thank you.
I meant.
Happy to put the motion. All those in favour? Anyone against? The motion is carried. Thank you. We have officers' reports for consideration. 13.1 Albury City water-wise rules. Councillor Thurley.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I move that Council agree to implement water-wise rules and undertake a comprehensive communication and engagement program with the community about water conservation.
Thank you. Councillor Glacken.
Happy to second that one. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Thurley, do you wish to speak to that?
Yes, I do, Mr Mayor. This is an extremely important issue. A few bits of background stuff that appeared in the report. Despite Albury's population growing by something like 16% since 1991, water consumption has dropped by 11%. So we are already a reasonably good community with respect to water consumption. But if we look at some other fairly disturbing stuff, and this comes up in my representations on the Murray-Darling Basin and Murray-Darling Association, for the period January to October 2018, we had the third lowest rainfall since 1900 in the basin overall, and the fourth lowest in New South Wales since 1900 overall. Not only that, we had maximum temperatures in 2018, which is the second highest on record. So we are suffering low rainfall and high temperatures. And the outlook from Bureau of Meteorology is that that's going to continue. So I believe this initiative to talk to our community, to educate our community is absolutely essential because things are going to get worse. I note today I saw that Wagga has introduced water-wise measures, and us getting on board reinforces this message. It's a critical message. Any of you that drive around the community in the middle of summer and see someone with a fine mist sprinkler operating at 2 p.m. in a 42-degree heat, you're just spraying the water into the atmosphere. It's all going nowhere. So we need to educate our community, and I think we don't need the heavy hand. We simply need education, and I think this is a great start.
Thank you, Councillor Thurley. There appears to be... we have a speaker for Councillor Con.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Look, I echo Councillor Thurley's comments. I think that the rules that are being proposed are entirely reasonable. We're looking at no garden watering between 10 a.m. and 5 p.m. And no hosing of paved pathways and driveways. I think it's really important to have that conversation with our community so that we appreciate that our water is a really valuable resource, and it's something that's not to be wasted. Whether it's a good year or a bad year, I think we need to use it appropriately in our community, and I support the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Con. Question from Councillor Stutchbury.
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. Through you to the appropriate member of staff. I think we need to take the lead on this, and my question is, do all council public buildings have rainwater tanks to drain rainfall from their roofs?
Mr Willow.
Through you, Mr Mayor. It's my understanding that some buildings do. I would have to get a full list of all buildings which do have rainwater harvesting and provide that at a later date.
Councillor Stutchbury.
I'd be very keen to see that list, and I'd be very keen for council staff to make moves to look at putting rainwater tanks on all council roofs where appropriate. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Glacken, you have a question?
Yes, further to Councillor Stutchbury's question, with regards to what buildings do or don't have water tanks, etc. I believe we would need to have a more thorough report and provision of information given to us based on the cost effectiveness or the actual effectiveness of having rainwater tanks on some of the buildings, etc. So, yes, I believe we would need a full report, not just the data on who does or doesn't, what does or doesn't have a tank. If we could have that included. Thank you.
Thank you. The General Manager indicated we can take that on notice, and I do believe Councillor Stutchbury said where possible, so we'll follow that up and certainly take that on notice and develop a report on that note. There being no further debate or questions, Councillor Thurley, do you wish to close debate?
No, thank you, Mr Mayor.
Happy to put the motion on that note. All those in favour? Anyone against? The motion is carried. 13.2, Native Title Manager notification. Thank you. Councillor Conn.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I move that Council A notify the Minister for Lands and Forestry of its employment of native title managers being Kerry May and Charles Franson in accordance with Section 8 of the Crown Land Management Act 2016, and B, make this notification annually as soon as practicable after 30th of June each year.
Thank you. Councillor Stutchbury.
Second that, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Conn, do you wish to speak to that at all?
Oh, look, I believe it's an administrative matter that we need to approve because of the change at the State Government to the Crown Lands Act, and I don't really need to comment.
Thank you. Happy to put the motion. All those in favour? Anyone against? The motion is carried. Thank you. CM 13.3, the 18-19 Works Program Status Report, September quarter. Councillor Glacken.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. To move the recommendation of the motion that Council A receive and note the status of the 2018-19 Works Program as 30 September 2018, and B, endorse the funding variations as listed in Table 1 of this report. And I would like to speak to this, including questions.
Excellent. Councillor Thurley.
Second the motion.
Councillor Glacken.
Thank you. Mr Mayor, we as Council focus on a works program which then creates our budget. Or our budget helps us create our works program. They go hand in glove. And I'm very conscious that our staff work most diligently to ensure that we get as close as possible to 100% completion. However, our current tracking, regretfully, is not as we would, and nor as our staff would like it. And so whilst we need to deal with this evening, I would like to ask if the General Manager would be able to look at a session with all councillors soon with a view to being able to bring further works into line and what options may or may not be available to us and the staff as a council to deal with this current backlog. I note some of the information in the report, but can we look at other options as well? And that would need to be dealt with at a separate evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs Acknage.
Yes, thanks for the question through, Mr Mayor. Happy to provide that, and further opportunity at the Council's strategic workshop as well to identify future key strategic projects that will inform that discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor King, you have a question?
Through you, Mr Mayor, the relevant member of staff. This report was dated the 5th of October. How come it's taken five weeks to get to us, given we've had a couple of council meetings in the meantime?
Mr Wallow.
Through you, Mr Mayor, the information contained in the report is the most up-to-date that we currently have. It does take some time to produce the report, so that is why there is a slight time delay between the time of writing and tonight's meeting.
Councillor King, you have a follow-up?
Yes. Further down to the issues questions, there's some excuses, seasonal conditions. Can you just expand what the seasonal conditions might be?
Mr Wallow.
Through you, Mr Mayor, if Councillor King could be more specific on which capital project he was referring to, I'd be able to give him more clear advice.
I'll read a statement. With the focus on project delivery, the schedule of projects is undertaken with the objective to achieve 100% completion. Project scheduling is based on factors including current asset condition, design status, appropriateness of timing for construction, funding qualifications, seasonal conditions, and available in-house skills and resources. And it goes on. So, seasonal conditions.
Mr. Wallow.
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Mayor. Issues is a, if you will, a catch-all for the report. Construction is down to seasonal conditions, whether they be wet conditions which would hold up works, or conditions where they are somewhat drier, giving rise to dust issues which require dust suppression, and they also can slow down the delivery program.
Councillor King.
Okay. And another one, the available in-house skills and resources. Is that statement inferring that we don't have sufficient, or the ones that we have are not able to complete the task?
Mr. Wallow.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. The engineering area has experienced over the last 6 months a number of staff resignations, retirements, and dare I say some staff members passing away. That has put strain on the existing teams to get the capital program designed. I am happy to say that the design team is currently one staff member down from a full complement. So we expect that we will be able to deliver on the design element in a more timely fashion from here in.
Further one. Well, actually, the design program is in the status table, probably the exemplary performing area. The issue of traffic improvement programs, 5% completed. Can you give us an update of why that's so low?
That specific program, I'd have to take that question on notice, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, last one. My calculation is that 61% of these programs in the table are below the 20%. Sorry, the 25%. You've got on the at the end of the table to achieve total percentage complete. Weightings have been applied to each program based on program value. Now, I'm not the sharpest pencil in the case. Can you enlighten me what the weightings mean in regards to that table?
Mr. Wallow.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. The weightings take into account the dollar value of that project, so a multi-million-dollar project would have a higher weighting than a $100,000 or $200,000 project.
Do you conclude, Councillor King?
I'm totally in the dark about what that means, so I won't say any more and find out a little bit more about that.
Thank you. Councillor Con, question.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Through you to the relevant member of staff. A few weeks ago at a workshop, we had a presentation from staff about the proposed project management framework, and in noting the works being behind schedule this quarter, is that something that you expect will be improved by the proposed project management framework?
Mr. Wallow.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, that is correct. The project management framework will improve on our delivery and the way we handle projects from concept through to the time that they've been designed and delivered in the field.
Councillor Thurley, have a question.
Yes, thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, probably to Mr. Wallow. Perhaps Mr. Wallow could give us some indication of the size of this works program in dollar value, so that we might get some understanding of what we're actually talking about.
Mr. Wallow.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Without having the exact dollar value in front of me, I would have to take that question on notice at this point. Thank you.
I'm happy to take a rough estimate.
Rough estimate, Mr. Wallow.
The works program at a rough estimate is approximately $70 million.
Well, it's 74.6 million on the front of the report, but it says 13 sub-programs, which include a total 440 identified projects of combined value. Would that be more other projects as well, Mr. Waller?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the $74.6 million program is made up of the 440 identified projects. The sub-programs, as I understand it, are listed in the table over Leith.
Yeah, okay. Councillor Gleichen, question.
Yes, thank you. If I can, to the most relevant member of staff, my understanding, and it follows a little bit from Councillor King's questions about the percentages for completion for the strategic objectives. My understanding is that, for example, the design program, a lot of the design needs to be undertaken prior to any of the works commencing, etc., so that it's not really out of kilter if the design program is more significantly completed than other areas, and that perhaps the traffic improvement program may be subsequent to the design work having been completed. So if I could just have that clarified by the staff, then that would be great.
Thank you. Mr. Waller.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, Councillor Gleichen is correct. The design program would ideally be significantly further ahead than the percent completion on the other projects. The other projects cannot be delivered until the design program has been completed. So hence it's sitting at 58.9%, which appears, as you mentioned there, to be ahead of the other programs.
Thank you. No further question on debate. Councillor Gleichen, do you wish to close debate?
No, that's fine. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Happy to put the motion. All those in favour? Anyone against? The motion is carried. Jones Street Pedestrian Bridge, 13.4. Thank you, councillors. Councillor Thurley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move that Council accepts the tender from JC Butco Engineering Proprietary Limited for contract number 18/02258 Jones Street Pedestrian Bridge and associated works for the lump sum amount of $154,994.20, including GST.
Thank you. Councillor Doxey.
Happy to second, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Thurley, I've got a question. Did you have me for me to take the question before we open debate?
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Stutchbury.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This question is through you to the most appropriate member of staff, and I'll begin my question with an observation. My observation is that the next item on the agenda that we are discussing is the wash bay at the Albury Waste Management Centre, where the best tender came in significantly over what staff had budgeted, and so staff went back to the tenderer and did some negotiations to sort all of this out. Now, here is my question. I'm sure you're all waiting with bated breath. This tender is less than half what council staff budgeted for the project. So I can conclude from that fact only one of two things. Either this tender is grossly inadequate for the job, and I'm not sure that that's the case, but I remain to be convinced, or two, the staff who allocated the budget for the tender made some mistakes. So I would like the most appropriate member of the staff to elucidate to me and all of us in this room exactly what the problem is here.
Thanks for the question, Councillor Stutchbury. Mr. Waller, it's your night tonight.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. There is a discrepancy between the budget allocation and the tendered work. The reason for that is that the program, the Jones Street Bridge upgrade, was originally, the concept at least, was brought up 4 years ago. 4 years ago, bridges of the type that has been chosen by the council officers were not as far advanced. When the concept was originally looked up, was envisaged, there was large-scale engineering works required to the existing bridge in order to build a new footpath. The other concepts also involve significant traffic management issues and building of islands, etc., to thin down that bridge to a single lane and therefore provide footpath access or segregated footpath access. Since those original concepts, councillors had experience in prefabricated bridges, particularly along Tabletop Road. These bridges are far cheaper to produce and can essentially be put in place in a couple of hours rather than days, weeks, or even months of labour on site.
Councillor Stutchbury, comfortable with that?
Well, that's a really good answer to my question. I think it covers most of the issues, and I think in summary we can say that we've got a very modern bridge and a 4-year-old budget for it.
Thank you. Councillor Thurley, do you wish to speak to the item?
No, thank you, Mr Mayor.
Being no question or debate, happy to put the motion. All those in favour? Anyone against the motion is carried. We have 13.5, which is the Albury Waste Management Centre Workshop, Wash Bay. Thank you, councillors. Councillor Thurley.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I move that Council accepts the revised tender for Ultra Project Services Proprietary Limited for contract number 16/01676, Albury Waste Management Centre Workshop, Wash Bay, in a lump sum of $622,907.60, including GST.
Thank you. Councillor Doxey.
Happy to second, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Thurley, you should open debate.
No, thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. No questions. Oh, a question. Councillor King.
Through you, Mr Mayor, the relevant member of staff. I just can't see on the report how many bays are there in this $600,000 wash bay.
Mr Wallow.
Through you, Mr Mayor, it's a single bay enclosed or roofed wash bay.
Councillor King.
Just so only one vehicle at a time can use it. It's only one wash bay. Is that correct?
Mr Wallow.
Through you, Mr Mayor. Yes, that is correct. The tender also includes all the necessary equipment in order, or plumbing works, which includes triple interceptors, silt capture, and so on. So it is not purely a concrete slab with a roof over it. There is a significant amount of engineering go into it so that the water from the wash bay can be safely carried from site as well.
Okay. I have a speaker against the motion. Councillor King.
Yes, just in reply to that answer from Mr Wallow, look, I think the amount is ridiculous for one wash bay for washing down a vehicle. I'll be voting against it.
Thank you. I have two speakers for. Councillor Glacken.
Thank you. I speak for the motion. Staff have undertaken an additional period of checking and negotiation with the tenderer. It is important that we have this facility, and during that second run at working with the tenderer, clearly some things were discovered that could be reduced, and it has reduced the overall cost. It is a significant piece of works. It's not just a concrete slab, it's a significant concrete slab because it has to be able to take all the heavy vehicles, which are significantly heavier than a normal car or indeed a truck. It has to be fully enclosed, it has to have a number of pits, the recycling of the water, the removal of the waste from that water, the fact that there's going to be a water tank, a 20,000 litre water tank. There'll be one of the water tanks that'll come through, Councillor Stutchbury. It'll have high pressure, high volume, etc., etc. It is a detailed and significant piece of work. They also have to relocate an existing fuel tank. There are a number of aspects that need to be undertaken. This is not a minor project. Yes, one vehicle only will be done at any one time. That will be a very large vehicle that will be done at any one of those times. So I support this recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Glacken. I've Councillor Thurley and no other speakers for or against. So, Councillor Thurley, do you wish to close debate?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I will. I hadn't intended to, but really, if we're going to start second-guessing our staff, we can question them on their estimates and so on. But if we're saying I know better, then I think we're getting ourselves into pretty dangerous territory. If I look at this, and I have been involved in multi-million-dollar projects with one of my previous employers and in my consulting business, we're talking about earthworks, the slab itself, the roof structure, the processing pits, holding tanks, oil water separators for the treatment of the wash water, a new 20,000 litre water tank, pressure pump, high volume hose, drainage pipes and pits, curb and gutter, relocation automation of the existing fuel tank. This is not a Mickey Mouse project, it's a big project. And while we'd always wish they could be done for half the price, this estimate is arrived at through significant discussion between council staff and the contractor, and I don't have any issue in accepting that as an appropriate sum of money.
Thank you. On that note, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Any against? The motion is carried. Thank you, councillors. 13.6, Laguna Drive Tabletop Road Community Space Construction. Councillor Con.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd like to move that Council A accept the tender from Enviroculture Services for contract number 18/130303 and 18/130304 Laguna Drive Tabletop Road Community Space for the lump sum amount of $327,276.18, including GST. Part B, reallocate $273,000, including GST, from Year 2 in the 4-year delivery program to the 2018-19 financial year as part of the next quarterly financial review. And I'd also like to add a Part C, please. Identify a suitable location and design for an additional open community space in the Laguna commercial area in consultation with the local community in the next 12 months.
Thank you. Councillor Thurley.
I'll second the motion, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Con, do you wish to speak to that?
Just briefly, Mr Mayor, this application has been subject to a lot of debate in the community, and I've attempted to reconcile the competing views in the motion I'm presenting tonight. We're faced with a piece of land left over from a servo and fast food development that's between that development and a roundabout. The proposed community space is certainly an improvement on leaving that land empty, and I'm sure it'll be used by the community. But I also understand the disappointment of Laguna residents who expected a major neighbourhood centre and public courtyard in that area, and that that space should be provided somewhere else in the Laguna commercial precinct, given that it can't be provided on this lot. So I hope that by producing this community space and an alternate community space, that the community will appreciate that effort.
Thank you. There's no speakers against. I have a speaker for. Councillor Stutchbury.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. This is an excellent amendment to this motion. I think that the space that has now been designed is an improvement on what we looked at a month ago, but better could be done, and item C in this motion I think covers that, and I will be happy to support it.
Thank you. There are no questions or speakers against. Councillor Con, did you wish to close debate?
No, thank you, Mr Mayor.
Happy to put the motion. All those in favour? Anyone against? The motion is carried. 13.7, development application 10.2018.3639 41 Merkel Street. Thank you, councillors. Councillor Glycan.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Through you to move the recommendation as a motion. It's a very long report. That council receive and note the contents of this report, and B, grant consent to development application 10.2018.36369.1 for the industrial building containing 7 industrial units, car parking and signage at Lock 2 in DP 11236667, addressed as 41 Merkel Street, Laguna, subject to the conditions contained in the draft determination included in attachment 3 to this report. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Stutchbury.
Second that, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Glycan, do you wish to open debate on that item?
No, however, I wish to retain my right of reply should there be a need to do so.
Thank you. There being no further questions or debate, Councillor Glycan, do you wish to close debate?
No, thank you very much.
Happy to put this motion with the division. All those in favour, Councillor Stutchbury, Councillor Doxey, Councillor Cameron, Councillor Mack, Councillor Con, Councillor King, Councillor Glycan and Councillor Thurley. The motion is carried. Thank you. CM 13.8, Development Application 10.2018.36169.1, 240 Kerr Road. Councillor Stutchbury.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd like to move that Council A receive and note the contents of this report, and B, grant consent to the development application 10.2018.36169.1 for a 4-lot subdivision at 240 Kerr Road and 4 Shepherd Court, Thurgoona, subject to the conditions contained in the draft determination included at attachment 4 to this report.
Thank you. Councillor Doxey.
Happy to second, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Stutchbury, I have a couple of questions. Did you wish to have those questions? You happy with that?
Yes, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Glacken, question?
Thank you. Through you to the most relevant member of staff. In the document that provides us with a layout for the subdivision that I was looking at last night, and I'm having trouble getting up at the moment, it didn't indicate where the corner block would have access to and from. Perhaps I was looking at the wrong plan.
I was going to ask the same question. Lot 108.
Mr Christie.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and thank you for the question. And through you, no, there hasn't been a proposed access point at this stage for Lot 108. We had proposed to put a restriction on Lot 108 that it can't get access from Kerr Road, but it hasn't been identified precisely where in Shepherd Court access would be. So that would be more likely to be determined at the time of an application for development of that block.
That's fine. So, if I may, by way of follow-up, confirming that the access point is intended to be Shepherd Court, and that it would therefore need to meet the requirements of council and RTA equivalent from corner, etc.
Mr Christie.
For you, Mr Mayor, thank you for the question. Yes, that is correct. There'll be no access to Kerr Road. It'll have to be from Shepherd Court.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Question, Councillor Thurley.
Yes, it relates to the same matter. I was going to ask the exact question that Councillor Glacken asked, where is the entrance? But it seems to me now I have a little issue that we're asked to approve a 4-lot subdivision, yet we don't know where this entrance will be. We know it won't be off Kerr Road, so we know it'll be in Shepherd Court. That means there could be one extra entrance and exit in Shepherd Court, which means this lot, this development would impose 3 additional driveways from Shepherd Court. Is that correct?
Mr Christie.
For you, Mr Mayor, and thanks for the question. So there was already a block that had access, that corner block, to Shepherd Court, and already had a restriction on it, no access to Kerr Road. So Lot 108 is not providing an additional access point to Kerr Road, to Shepherd Court. That doesn't already exist.
Can I have a follow-up there? But the 4-lot subdivision does add 2 extra driveways into Shepherd Court.
For you, Mr Mayor, yes, that's correct. 2 extra driveways being, in essence, for Lot 105 and for Lot 107.
You comfortable with that, Councillor Thurley? Yep. Councillor Glacken, you have another question?
Yes, if I may. When we agree development applications for subdivisions, so not the development building application, but a development for subdivision, is it normal for us to know where the driveways are? I believe it's not, but I just wondered, following up on Councillor Thurley's question.
Mr Christie.
And for you, Mr Mayor, thank you again for the question. It's not always required for us to know exactly where driveway locations are. A number of times they are provided to either indicate where existing locations may be or to take into account existing constraints such as creek crossings, large street trees, etc.
Thank you. Councillor Stutchbury, do you wish to open debate on this item?
Yes. Thank you, Mr Mayor. This subdivision is pretty much in keeping with the locality. I read the 6 objections to it, all from residents of Shepherd Court. Some of the objections were irrelevant and had to do with a public place of worship, which is not being applied for in this DA. All of these blocks are either the same size as or bigger than the blocks in Shepherd Court, so there's really no loss of amenity. And the proponent has agreed to take down the offending fence that upset some people. So all in all, it's a pretty reasonable DA, and I see no reason not to support it.
Thank you, Councillor Stutchbury. Councillor Thurley used to speak for, no speakers against.
Pretty well along the same lines as Councillor Stutchbury. This is an application purely for a 4-lot torrencidal subdivision. It has nothing to do with a place of public worship. I suspect that will come later. However, when that comes, I'll vote on that matter. At the moment, this is a routine subdivision and I will have to vote for it.
Thank you. There are no further speakers for or against. Councillor Stutchbury, do you wish to close debate?
In fact, I do. I'd just like to close with something I forgot to say when I opened debate, which was that there was also some objections to the number of driveway entrances into Shepherd Court from the opponents, but these are all blocks for who knows what, but presumably houses, and so traffic ought not to be an issue in that regard on Shepherd Court. Thank you.
Thank you. I have to put the motion as a division. All those in favour, Councillor Stutchbury, Councillor Doxey, Councillor Cameron, Councillor Mack, Councillor Con, Councillor King, Councillor Glacken and Councillor Thurley. Thank you, councillors. Okay. There are no items for officers' reports for noting. There are no delegates' reports for noting. CM16. Councillor Doxey.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. In August 2014, this council started off with the centenary of the First World War by a simple act of the Ode. And I intend now that yesterday was the anniversary, the centenary of the armistice. So I'd like everyone to stand and we'll do a simple service, which is simply the Ode, the last post, a minute's silence, and then Rouse will be played. So please all stand. They went with songs to the battle. They were young, straight of limb, true of eye, steady and aglow. They were staunch to the end, against odds uncounted. They fell with their faces to the foe. They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them, lest we forget. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, councillors and staff and invited guests. Any other urgent business, councillors? Well, that concludes our meeting, 7:02. Thank you.